Have you ever had that feeling where um, you're just grinding away at something? Like you're putting in the hours, you're working incredibly hard, but you feel like you are getting absolutely nowhere.
Oh, yeah. It is like trying to run waist deep in water. You're exerting all this massive, exhaustive energy, but your forward momentum is just, well, it's painfully slow. You're fighting the current for every single inch.
Exactly. And meanwhile, you look over and someone else is just effortlessly gliding through life. I mean, they're getting the promotions, they are thriving in their relationships, they seem genuinely happy, and they are not working half as hard as you are. Honestly, it is enough to drive you crazy.
It really is. It creates this immense internal friction
Yeah.
because we naturally start to look inward, right? We think, what is wrong with me? Am I not smart enough? I just, not disciplined
And
enough.
we just immediately blame ourselves.
Exactly. We internalize that struggle as a personal, fundamental failing.
But what if it is not a personal failing at all? What if actually you are perfectly equipped, but you are just standing in the completely wrong place? Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're trying to solve that exact feeling of friction for you.
Yes, and we're looking at a profound concept from a philosophical essay. It's titled Looking for Your Own Garden of Eden by Shufeng. And the author argues that this feeling isn't a lack of effort or talent on your part, it's an environmental mismatch.
Which totally reframes the way we look at success. The core mission of our deep dive today is to explore this premise that your success, your happiness, and even the value of your absolute best personality traits, they are entirely dependent on finding the right environment, like your personal Garden of Eden.
Right, and to set the tone here, this philosophy approaches the idea by blending observations from the natural world with historical anomalies and some deeply spiritual frameworks. It tries to explain why we so often feel fundamentally out of place.
And it is important to establish upfront that this text weaves in a very specific spiritual worldview alongside its historical stuff. Just to be clear, we aren't here to judge or, endorse that specific spiritual lens or take any sides on the political stuff it brings up later.
Exactly. We are just impartially reporting what the author presents. We want to extract those underlying mechanisms of human nature and environmental alignment to find those aha moments that explain why you might feel so completely stuck.
And nature is actually the perfect entry point for this because, the natural world is beautifully, brutally objective about environmental matching.
Oh, absolutely. There's no ambiguity, no ego, and no social conditioning to muddy the waters out in the wild.
Right. So let's start with the tiger because it's such a stark image from the text. The tiger is the undisputed king of the mountains. In that specific, rugged environment, it commands absolute power.
Hmm.
Its camouflage works perfectly, its ambush tactics are flawless, and it has unquestioned prestige. But what happens when that exact same tiger leaves the mountain and wanders down into a lush, flat plain?
Well, suddenly the environment strips away its advantages. The author points out that on the plains, the tiger gets teased and bullied by a pack of wild dogs.
Which sounds crazy, right?
Upside.
A tiger bullied by dogs. But think about the mechanism of that failure. The tiger hasn't lost its claws. It hasn't suddenly forgotten how to bite or become lazy,
No, of course not.
but the tall grass is gone, so it can't hide. The terrain is flat, and flat ground favors the endurance running of a pack of wild dogs over the short, explosive ambush of a solitary tiger. The environment has completely neutralized its natural design.
Which allows lesser predators, who are natively adapted to the plains, by the way, to exploit the terrain. The essay actually presents a whole series of these natural mismatches to establish a pattern.
Oh, like the dragon.
Yes. Think of a dragon, the mythical lord of the abyss who can summon wind and rain. If that dragon gets stranded in a shallow puddle, it gets duped and mocked by shrimp and small fish.
Shrimp mocking a dragon.
Right. Or a magnificent phoenix.
Right.
You lock a phoenix in a domestic cage and it loses its brilliant feathers and its spirit. It ultimately ends up worse off than a common chicken.
The camel is another great one. A camel has incredible stamina and is an absolute indispensable lifeline in the desert.
Huh.
But if you bring a camel to a coastal seaside town, it is fundamentally less useful to you than a standard donkey.
Because the camel's entire physiology, its ability to store water, its padded feet for sand, all of that is completely wasted on wet, hard coastal terrain.
Right.
The foundational rule being established here is that life, in any form, can only give full play to its strengths in an environment suited to its inherent nature.
Okay, here's an analogy that came to mind while I was thinking about this. It is like taking a multi-million-dollar, state-of-the-art Formula One race car. and trying to drive it through a muddy swamp.
Oh, that's incredibly fitting. Yeah, let's look at the engineering of that. An F1 car has almost zero ground clearance. Its suspension is incredibly rigid to maintain aerodynamics and stability at like 200 miles an hour.
Right, it's built for speed.
Exactly. It is an engineering masterpiece for smooth asphalt. But put it in a swamp, and that rigid suspension guarantees it gets deeply stuck in the very first rut. The exact traits that make it elite on the track are the specific mechanisms of its failure in the mud.
Exactly. You are sitting there spinning your wheels in the muck, and you get passed by some guy in a rusted-out 20-year-old tractor. Now, is the tractor a better, more sophisticated piece of machinery than the Formula One car?
Obviously not.
Of course not. But the tractor has massive treaded tires and high clearances. It's built for the swamp.
And this leads to a really harsh, fascinating reality about being in the wrong environment. You aren't just neutralized. You aren't just rendered invisible or average. You are actively mocked.
Like the shrimp duping the dragon. Or the wild dogs teasing the tiger.
Precisely. The philosophy invokes the classic story of the white swan raised among ducks and chickens. It is famously ridiculed as the ugly duckling. Because when you are a swan trapped in a chicken coop, you are entirely judged by the metrics of a chicken. And frankly, a swan makes a terrible chicken. Its neck is too long, its feet are weird for scratching dirt.
So true.
You will be seen as a silly, useless creature simply because your unique, specialized value doesn't even register on the chicken's radar.
You know, it is incredibly easy to accept this when we are talking about animals or cars. Like, we are perfectly comfortable saying a camel doesn't belong on a beach. But the moment we apply this to human intellect or human capability, our egos just completely get in the way.
Oh, absolutely.
We tend to assume that if someone is a genius in one field, they should just be competent everywhere. But history shows us that is absolutely not true.
It really isn't. When we pivot from natural metaphors to human realities, we see massive historical examples of geniuses who were planted in the wrong soil. Think about Vincent van Gogh.
Oh, a perfect example.
Here is a man operating on an incredibly high, spiritually enlightened frequency, producing some of the most transcendent art in human history.
But he lived his life in a secular society that simply did not have the receiver to decode his frequency. Because he was in an environment that valued different, highly commercial metrics of success at the time, his genius just didn't translate.
Right. He was unappreciated, taken advantage of, and ultimately died in poverty and depression.
Or look at Zhang Jie from Chinese history. This was the legendary founding minister of the Zhou dynasty, an absolute master strategist who orchestrated the rise of an empire.
Yes.
But historical accounts note that when he tried to operate as a merchant and do business, he was remarkably terrible at it.
Yeah.
He suffered constant financial losses.
Which is wild to think about. And the most vivid modern example of this from the text is Chen Jingrun.
Oh, the mathematician.
Right. He was a brilliant mathematician who
Yeah.
made massive breakthroughs on the Goldbach conjecture. We are talking about the absolute crown jewel of complex mathematics. He is operating at the pinnacle of abstract logic.
Yeah.
But the author notes that when this profound math genius went down to the local market to buy vegetables, the people there ridiculed him as being a bit silly.
Which perfectly mirrors the dragon being laughed at by the shrimp in the shallow puddle.
Exactly.
Okay, hold on. I have to linger on this and challenge it a bit. Because if you are operating at the level of the Goldbach conjecture, you understand numbers and logic better than 99.9% of the planet.
Sure.
Haggling over cabbage is basic elementary arithmetic. You can't tell me a literal genius is completely baffled by a vegetable stand. Shouldn't he just be able to adapt and figure it out?
It's a natural objection because we are so deeply conditioned to view intelligence as a vertical ladder. We think that if you climb to the very top rung of abstract mathematics, you can easily just step down and see all the lower rungs of basic commerce.
Right.
But this framework suggests intelligence and maybe consciousness itself is horizontal. Think of it like a radio dial.
Okay, a radio dial. But wouldn't a highly powerful radio still pick up the lower frequencies? Even if there is some static, you should still hear the music.
Well, not if it is a hyper-specialized receiver. If a mind is perfectly tuned to the specific frequency of advanced theoretical mathematics, it is completely optimized for that realm.
Okay.
That immense optimization requires a biological and cognitive trade-off. You become fundamentally out of tune with the secular world. The subtle social cues of haggling, the aggressive posturing of a market vendor, the small talk. You aren't just bad at math in the market, you are blind to the social mechanics of the transaction.
Oh, I see. So going back to the F1 car, it's so optimized for high-speed aerodynamics that it literally lacks the turning radius to navigate a grocery store parking lot.
That is a brilliant way to put it,
The
yes.
steering wheel physically doesn't turn that way.
Exactly. The very cognitive traits that make you a genius in your specific Garden of Eden are the exact traits that make you look like a fool when you step outside of it.
Wow.
If you leave your designated Eden, you will be seen as a waste or good for nothing by the people who are natively adapted to that lower or just different frequency.
That is heavy. Because if placing intellectual genius into a vegetable market causes that much friction, what happens when we take our deepest, most profound moral virtues and drop them into the wrong career paths?
Now we get into the really controversial stuff.
Yeah, this is where the philosophy gets genuinely provocative, and it challenges a lot of our cultural assumptions.
It does. There is a highly specific and frankly very counterintuitive framework here detailing how certain personality traits directly contradict certain professions. It forces us to look at the structural machinery of the systems we live in.
Let's break these down because some of them genuinely stop me in my tracks. The first one, and remember we're just reporting the author's arguments here, is that if you are a kind, soft-hearted person, you should never lead an army. You can never be a general.
Right. We culturally romanticize the idea of the kind leader, but look at the actual mechanics of war. A military commander must constantly make ruthless calculations regarding human life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They have to willingly send people to die to achieve a tactical objective. If your primary driving virtue is soft-hearted kindness, the sheer brutal machinery of war will either psychologically break you, or your hesitation will get your entire unit killed.
Then there's business. The essay states that if you are a righteous person with a strong sense of justice who naturally wants to help the weak, you should never go into business. You will never become truly wealthy.
Because maximizing massive profit almost always requires exploiting leverage. It requires finding a weakness in a market, a supplier, or a competitor, and pressing on it to extract value.
Right.
That structural requirement directly conflicts with the instinct to shield and protect the vulnerable. You can't ruthlessly exploit a margin if you are constantly giving your leverage away out of fairness.
And it keeps going. Honest, truth-seeking people should never enter politics. Why? Because the system of politics isn't actually built on objective truth. It's built on optics, compromise, and coalition building.
Yes.
If you insist on raw facts over political expediency, you won't rise to be a senior official.
The same logic applies to writing, actually. There's a fascinating point that honest, unsophisticated people shouldn't be writers.
Which, I mean, sounds incredibly elitist at first glance.
Why?
Why shouldn't an honest, unsophisticated person write? They probably have great, grounded ideas.
It's not that they lack good ideas, it's that the environment of public discourse demands eloquence, rhetorical framing, and sometimes emotional manipulation to capture an audience's attention.
Ah, I see.
If you just state the raw, unsophisticated truth plainly, this system won't reward your honesty. Instead, your lack of polish will invite scorn from those who value rhetorical sophistication over substance.
Okay, all of those challenge our ideals about how the world should work. But here's the one that really flipped the script for me.
The marriage one.
Yes. The philosophy argues, and I quote, "If you have a universally loving heart, then you should never marry." Wait, what? A loving heart shouldn't marry.
I know, it's wild.
Society literally teaches us that a deeply loving heart is the absolute foundational prerequisite for marriage.
It is a stunning reversal of expectations. But we have to examine the mechanism of the institution itself. Marriage, historically and structurally, is a system of exclusivity.
Okay.
It is about prioritizing one single person, one family unit, above all others. The text suggests that if a person possesses a truly universal, boundless love for all humanity, forcing them into marriage ties that love up, it restricts their brilliance.
It's like taking a massive philanthropic fund that was designed to feed and shelter an entire city and legally binding it so that it can only ever buy groceries for one single house.
That's a perfect analogy.
The resources are vast and beautiful, but the system of distribution is far too narrow, which creates immense friction and ultimately stifles the purpose of the fund.
That is exactly it. If we look at the broader theme, connecting all these warnings from the general to the politician to the universally loving heart, it is a profound critique of systemic nature. Certain systems require tricks, moral compromise, exclusivity, or ruthlessness just to function.
So you might walk into a career thinking, I'm going to take my pure, uncorrupted honesty into local politics and clean up the system from the inside.
And this philosophy is actively warning you, no, you won't. Trying to force a pure virtue into a fundamentally compromised or highly specialized system won't fix the system.
Right.
The system's machinery is too deeply entrenched. It will simply chew up your virtue, spit you out, and mock your naivety along the way. It will destroy the person, not the corruption.
So what do we actually do with this? If you find yourself deeply frustrated in your career, constantly feeling like you are compromising your core values just to survive the week, what is the actionable move? Do we try to change the people around us to match our frequency?
The absolute loudest warning here is do not try to change people.
A leopard cannot change its spots.
Precisely. You shouldn't waste your precious energy trying to convince those who hold fundamentally opposite views. And this ties perfectly back into that concept of the horizontal radio dial we talked about earlier.
Right, the different frequencies.
If someone is genuinely operating on a different frequency of mind and consciousness, the author argues that no matter how much you praise them, comfort them, or try to logically persuade them, they simply will not understand your underlying intentions.
The line that really resonated with me was, even if you open your heart to them, they will still be indifferent and persist in their old ways.
Oh, yeah.
That is such a deeply recognizable, visceral human pain.
Yeah.
Have you ever poured your absolute heart and soul out to someone like a boss, a romantic partner, a longtime friend, desperately trying to get them to see your perspective and they just stare at you blankly? It's utterly exhausting.
It is exhausting because you are speaking a language their receiver isn't built to decode. You are broadcasting in FM and they are in AM radio. The actionable advice is to stop trying to force the connection.
No.
Stop trying to teach the wild dogs how to appreciate the tiger. Seek out the people who natively understand your frequency, who naturally appreciate you, and who like you exactly as you are.
Now, the text does introduce a very specific spiritual dimension here that we should unpack, because it adds an interesting layer to this idea of belonging.
Right.
Again, just reporting what's there, but it suggests that if you come from what it calls the 1,000-year world, or the 10,000-year world of heaven, you shouldn't envy the mortal world's wealth.
Right. The essay frames this within a distinct spiritual cosmology.
Right.
The premise is that if your soul, or your intrinsic nature, originates from a higher heavenly frequency, you absolutely shouldn't waste your life trying to achieve ideal material results in the secular mortal world. The soil of this world simply isn't engineered for your specific type of seed to bloom.
So your Garden of Eden is literally in heaven, not on earth. So trying to force yourself to care about secular status or driving yourself crazy trying to accumulate massive wealth is just going to bring you deep misery. You are a heavenly creature trying to thrive in a secular puddle.
Yeah.
And honestly, whether you take that literally as a deeply held spiritual truth or metaphorically as just recognizing that you have a completely different value system than mainstream consumer society, the end result is identical. You have to stop fighting your nature and find your right soil.
And crucially, finding that soil is only the first step. Because human ego is a powerful thing.
Oh boy, isn't it?
The author ends with a very potent cautionary tale about what happens when we let our ego trick us into abandoning our Garden of Eden once we've actually found it.
The story of the division commander. This is such a great historical parallel. So there's this military hero, a division commander. In the Army, he is an absolute legend. The environment matches his traits perfectly. The text says he battled like a fish in water. He was completely in his element, respected, and highly effective.
But then human nature and hubris take over. He becomes proud, he becomes conceited, he looks at his massive success in the military, and his ego whispers, "I'm a universal genius. If I am this successful here, I will be just as successful anywhere I go."
The sheer arrogance of success.
It is. So he leaves the army, he voluntarily walks out of his Garden of Eden and goes into civil administration. He expects to be hailed as a hero and a brilliant leader there too.
But think about the mechanical shift in those environments. The military is strictly top-down. It relies on clear objectives, absolute discipline, and rigid hierarchy.
Right.
Civil administration relies on diplomacy, nuanced compromise, bureaucracy, and coalition building. He essentially brought a broadsword to a delicate negotiation table.
Exactly. And because of that mismatch, he spends years rushing around, suffering constant setbacks, and achieving absolutely nothing of value. The essay bluntly states that the hero in the army became good for nothing during peacetime.
Why? Because he entirely forgot that his brilliance was conditional. It was conditional on his environment. I mean, we see this constantly in the modern corporate world.
Oh, all the time.
It is the classic Peter principle. You get a promotion straight out of the exact job you are amazing at. You are an incredible, brilliant software programmer, so the company rewards you by making you a manager of other programmers.
And that's a disaster.
Right, because managing people requires a completely different frequency than writing code.
Yeah.
You become a terrible manager, and you are miserable. You voluntarily left your Eden for a title.
We constantly assume our competence is universal. But there's a wonderful reminder here. Never assume that cacti can grow everywhere or can please everyone. A cactus is a biological marvel of survival.
Yeah.
It thrives in the scorching, waterless desert where almost nothing else can live. But if you take that same resilient cactus and plant it in the middle of a lush, wet rainforest, it quickly rots and dies.
So we have this incredible multi-layered framework.
Hmm.
It is all about matching the organism to the environment, whether we're talking about animals, intellect, morality, or spirituality. But it begs a massive question.
Which is?
Why is it so incredibly hard for us to just stay in our lane? If our Eden exists, why do we constantly want to prove we can survive in the swamp?
Well, the philosophy points to a truly tragic irony in human behavior. It argues that the greatest creator actually gives everyone a chance to access their personal Garden of Eden. In fact, it is very often the environment, the skill, or the calling that comes most easily to us.
But that ease is exactly the trap, isn't it?
That is the ultimate trap. Because it comes so naturally, because it flows without friction, we don't value it. We deeply undervalue our own natural gifts because they don't feel like hard work.
Wow.
We ignore our Eden or we actively throw it away because society has conditioned us to believe that we are supposed to be striving for something painful, something that society deems more universally prestigious.
Okay, let's wrap this up and bring it all together because there is so much to chew on here.
Yep.
If you are listening to this right now and you are feeling that exhausting uphill battle, that constant draining friction in your life, your relationships, or your career, you need to internalize the core takeaway from Swifting's premise.
Yeah.
You aren't necessarily broken. You aren't incompetent or lacking discipline.
You might just be a camel standing on a coastal beach, constantly judging yourself against the local donkeys. Or you might be a dragon, trapped in a shallow puddle, letting yourself be mocked by shrimp who don't even comprehend what a hurricane is.
Exactly. You have to stop fighting your fundamental nature. Stop trying to twist your core virtues to fit into corrupt or incompatible systems that will only chew you up. And please, stop exhausting your soul trying to change people who are operating on a completely different radio frequency. Give yourself permission to find the soil where you can actually bloom.
And if we connect all of this back to that initial feeling of grinding friction we started the show with, if the environment we are fundamentally meant to thrive in is truly the one that comes most effortlessly to us, how much of your life have you wasted because society conditioned you to believe that true success absolutely has to be a painful uphill battle?
Wow. That completely changes the metric for success.
Right. What if the thing you are brushing off right now as too easy or dismissing as just a hobby is actually your personal Garden of Eden, patiently waiting for you to finally notice it?
That is something to seriously think about the next time you feel like you're spinning your wheels in the mud. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your environment, tune into your own frequency, and we will catch you next time.